Hello, welcome to the Family Values Podcast. My name's Joe Woods.
My name's Tom Hicks.
So we're talking to you on the date of the 4th of January 2020. Happy New Year.
Mm-hmm. Happy New Decade.
Happy New Decade. Oh, shit, okay. I'm getting old. So basically, we're at an interesting time. So as I said, it's the 4th of January. Qasem Soleimani's just been assassinated the day before today. We are now, 2 weeks separated from the British general election?
Yeah, just over 2 weeks.
Just over 2 weeks, and just since we last spoke to you, a little bit of an update. Our social media is now up. All our episodes so far are all now up on YouTube. Producer Harris now has kind of streamlined workload so that we now have a faster way of mixing and mastering, and now you're probably going to be hearing this a couple of days or so after we've recorded it. So, yes.
Yeah.
So things are moving faster.
Mm-hmm.
There are also some more fun things coming up for the group of you that have started to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be letting you know that via the social media and in upcoming episodes as well. So we're going to start off with the issue of the Labour leadership debate, or the upcoming Labour leadership debate. Tom, do you want to sort of just start this, just throw your kind of 2 cents into it and kind of a bit of background?
Yeah, sure. So we've obviously known that there will be a Labour leadership debate since the election, when Corbyn announced that he intends to resign at the front of his Islington constituency. But there's always been the question of how will it happen and who's going to put their name forwards. And we're still now getting the sort of drip feed of people who are actually putting their name forward. So I believe it was yesterday, or might be the day before, where Jess Phillips has now put her name forward. We have
Lisa Nandy.
Emily Thornberry, and Clive Lewis, for some reason, has also put his name forward.
Has Clive Lewis put his name forward?
Yeah,
of course he has. Yeah.
Which is something that nobody asked for, but we're getting anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the same. I will say, now that those names have come forward, so all of them being centrists of one ilk or another, as we said, Jess Phillips and Lisa Nandy, Keir Starmer, who did we just say as well?
We've got Emily
Thornberry and Clive Lewis.
And Yvette Cooper as well. She hasn't announced yet, but she is. She was.
Yeah, but she's still in the weeds. I mean, I'm not going to add her here because, and also Yvette Cooper, I mean, has tried to run for leadership so many times, and I mean, she has been interim leader, isn't she? So.
Yes, I think she was very briefly at one point. But
I think before, in the run-up to Corbyn's election, she was interim leader, if I'm remembering correctly.
I reckon she's sort of playing the field at the moment, seeing who's the best deal, who's going to offer her, because she's she's not really confined to one group, apart from not really in the Corbynista camp, is she?
Well, I mean, she's still a Blairite, and I don't want to say the stink of Blairism, because there are a lot of people now sort of, I suppose, veering back to Blairism. But I think she's kind of a spent force.
Yeah,
Yvette Cooper.
I think that's right as well.
I can't see her really coming. I can see her putting her hat in the ring and then falling out when we start to get to the first phases of the leadership sort of race. Mm-hmm. I will say a lot of these people that have thrown their hats in, I think, are token efforts, just because people have said either they will or they should put their hats in.
Yeah.
So YouGov put out a poll, I think not yesterday but the night before. Essentially, it was a poll of supposedly the Labour membership, but I'd like to know what part of the membership it was.
Yeah, we're a bit sceptical that they might have underestimated the sort of Corbyn base in this poll.
I think they've specifically, either they've gone to a constituency or they've gone to a part of the country that is Labour but not quite as, hard left as the membership is supposed to be at the moment. Because if we are being told correctly, that, essentially 3/4 of the current membership are Corbynistas. I mean, they came in, to bring Corbyn to power under Momentum.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons that was obviously brought in under the changes that Ed Miliband had made, and then they was secured by the fact that they made it, Corbyn then in 2016 made it a lot harder for people to join.
Yeah.
Where he upped the £3 membership to nearly £30, I think it was.
Yeah.
Which is, very quite ironic in its own way. But we're now looking at this poll, and I think we should just give a little bit of background for anyone who doesn't know how the Labour leadership would work.
So essentially, just to give some background on that poll, the reason me and Tom are both sceptical is because Keir Starmer came out on top with 61% of of members saying they would vote for Starmer.
Starmer over Rebecca Bailey.
That's it. Well, again, we're going to get into this in a little bit as to, well, one, why she shouldn't have even been put in that poll yet was because, well, one, she hasn't put her hat in the ring. So why put Long Bailey in if she hasn't officially come forward and made herself a candidate?
It's a pretty common practice of polls. They do that quite a lot. Particularly, the American polls would have a lot of people who they thought were going to be in the primary even before, which those polls were completely useless beforehand. So this might turn out to be a complete one-off.
So it was Starmer at 61%. It was Long Bailey at 39%. We then had I think we had Lisa Nandy. No, it was Jess Phillips at 12%.
Yeah,
Lisa Nandy at 8%. Was that Clive Lewis at 8? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Jesus.
No, Clive Lewis is Clive Lewis at 8, and then Lemony Thornberry at 7, and Lisa Nandy at 6.
Do you know what? I'm actually surprised. As much as I'm not a big fan of Thornberry, I'm actually surprised that Clive Lewis came out on top of Thornberry, because Clive Lewis, I mean, for all intensive purposes, is a bean counter. He's not really a politician. No,
but he's very quite vocal on social media as well, and I think that might be a lot of the thing. I think the Twitterverse is quite small, but he's quite loud within it.
Yes.
We've got, because the way that it would...
Lisa Nandy came on bottom of 6, which, by the way, is interesting to me, because everyone kind of tipped Lisa Nandy as being this voice for the North, and she'd win back a load of votes, and I was always sceptical, and there we go, it's in writing.
That's fair enough, vindicated on that one. But it's an elimination type process. So effectively, there'll be rounds around every single round. The person with the least amount of vote share would get eliminated.
Yeah.
So in round 1, they reckon Keir Starmer will get 36%, and then Rebecca Bailey 23%, and then the percentages that Joe sort of just went, and then the process of elimination goes Nandy first, Thornberry second, Lewis third, then Cooper, then Phillips in round 5, and then we've got the 61 to 39 in the runoff election, with Starmer getting 61, according to this poll.
So, if this poll is correct, and to be fair to YouGov, these polls are getting closer and closer to the truth.
Oh yeah, their MRP was very, very good.
Absolutely. I mean, it was 10 seats off on what Labour would achieved during the last election.
Yeah, it was very, very accurate. They've certainly recovered from the sort of 2015 and 2016 lull in their accuracy. They've gone back and actually been able to properly account for aspects like the Shiratori effect, for instance.
Yeah, so the point I'm just going to make is, if this is correct, Starmer could win the next, easily be the next Labour leader if what me and Tom suspect isn't the truth, which if they've just spoken to one certain constituency that isn't particularly representative of the current Labour membership. I believe that's probably the case, because again, Starmer with that big a vote share in the current Labour membership, I think it seems a bit disingenuous to me.
No, I think that's right. And what was also interesting to me is the way that the votes get split out after people get eliminated. It seems to be pretty evenly pretty evenly distributed, apart from Beck Cooper, where pretty much most of Beck Cooper's will go to Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
So it does seem that there's the sort of the fractions that the Westminster bubble defines these people at don't really translate that well into this poll.
No.
They sort of seem to, people have their own personal preferences regarding rather than picking a fraction and then going down the list of their preferred candidates per fraction.
So I believe, if this is the case and me and Tom are wrong, Starmer will be the next Labour leader if Corbyn steps down. We'll get onto that later. He will be the next Labour leader, but I believe he'll be a Kinnock type figure. Me and Tom were talking about this before we started recording. Kinnock will be, Starmer will be to the Labour Party what Kinnock was to New Labour. He will never become Prime Minister, but he'll be the reforming figure that would make the way for the next big charismatic sort of overhauling Labour leader, probably bring it back to the centre, or maybe the new version of New Labour might even take it a little bit further to the right than it went last time, because in all honesty, that's probably the way they're going to have to go.
What would they go for? Would they go for newer Labour or new
Labour? New Labour.
Yeah.
Or maybe like new metal, new Labour. Maybe it's Labour with like rapping over metal bounce riffs. I don't know. But the point being, I don't know, because going on to where Labour should go now, and I know you're probably going to agree with me as Tom, but I think New Labour has to be centrist and has to be somewhat protective of the private sector with again also this kind of social element, obviously NHS, protection and funding for the NHS, and obviously infrastructure programs.
Yeah.
But I believe they have to start becoming a bit more sort of populist. I think as Miliband started to show before the 2015 election.
I would say that their best bet is not to abandon, well, at least in their rhetoric.
Liberalism.
Yeah, not to abandon liberalism, and not to sort of abandon the idea that they want to make a better society.
But they have to throw a wink and a nudge.
Yes, and I think what they actually had in the 2017 referendum, a sort of good. 2017 election,
Yep.
I thought they had quite a good, not from my perspective, but from other people's perspective, balance, where they only had a few flagship things like renationalising the rails.
Yep.
Stuff which is socialist in nature, yet very, very popular with people across the political spectrum.
Yes.
And they went completely off the deep end in the 2019 election
With
they just
things that
everything.
just made no sense.
Yes.
I mean, broadband, for example.
Like one of my, I think we've mentioned this before, one of my biggest pet peeves of criticisms of the left is that the right give to the left is that they just want free stuff, and they're lazy and they just want the government to give them. I genuinely don't think that's true, but they really didn't help themselves in the 2019.
No, absolutely not. I mean, and when you speak to a lot of the electorate and say, well, why did you not vote for Green? Particularly when people were asked in the North East, I mean, I know a lot of people who went canvassing for Labour have said that when they went canvassing in the North East and the North, areas that are traditionally Labour, and said, well, why will you not vote for Corbyn? Why will you not vote for Labour? Because a big part of it was the promises. Yeah. Well, in what way do they make sense? I mean, these are promises that would bankrupt the country for no real good. Yeah.
I mean, if you looked at the Institute of Fiscal Studies gave a sort of analysis of how bad and how miscalculated each of the manifestos were, and you sort of had the Tories, which was over but not very well calculated, Lib Dem slightly more, and then Labour was just completely off the chart on both of those. So people were saying, oh, none of them have been properly costed. Yeah, but it's about the levels which they're out that have been not properly costed, which was really
Labour could have said all they wanted. Oh, well, we've got a costed manifesto. What about the others? Well, I mean, by every economist's recollection, or sort of reading of those quote-unquote pricings and costings, they were wrong. They made no sense. There was no kind of resource to base sort of functionality costing. There was nothing that made any sense.
Well, they had effectively spent the corporation tax increases which they were planning, basically to bring it back up to the pre-coalition levels, and they had spent that like 3 or 4 times over, and they were way overestimating it. Even if you don't take into account the fact that our corporation tax receipts have gone up every single year that we've lowered corporation tax, which is a weird situation with us. It's not a general rule you can apply just because we have a special situation with Ireland. And we're in direct competition with Ireland for our corporation tax.
Yes.
The lower we make it, the easier it is for companies to be based in the UK rather than Ireland.
Yes, because once we lower our corporation tax, we have a more... I suppose we have a bit more of a pull over Ireland being just one of the biggest economies on earth and having the city.
Yeah, the benefits start to outweigh the benefits of being based in the UK outweigh the tax benefits of being based in Ireland.
Dublin, exactly.
Yeah. And the only ones that you see not have that now are sort of internet-based companies, sort of like LinkedIn. I see a lot of bank statements in my job, and you see constantly Google Dublin, Apple Dublin, Amazon Luxembourg. But
Luxembourg being the other one that is just absolutely. But I do think it sounds shitty, but they've done it before, which is they have to just forget about the left of the party. What I mean by that is, okay, it's difficult because if, again, we are to believe that the majority of the membership's now made up of the hard left, then it means forever it's going to be chasing its tail. The parliamentary party and the head of the party as well is going to want these kind of quote unquote Blairite sort of centrist sort of leadership, but yet the membership will just always vote in the other direction. So Labour potentially could just be chasing its tail for years, or what can happen is they can vote in Starmer. They can have this Kinnock-like reforming figure. The question is, we're probably a bit too far away to know from this, when Starmer does lose the next election, because he will. I mean, he's too polarising a figure. He can't win the North.
Yeah, and just even if he was a great candidate, it would be a massive, mammoth task for him
to win back that many seats.
It would be basically it would be an actual bigger election result than the one we've just had, basically. It would be akin to 97.
And again, because we're talking at least 5 years away, who could you see him potentially opening the floor for?
I think at this point, it's extremely what they really need is they need someone who is completely unknown right now, preferably someone who has just come into the Labour Party on a sort of centristic, although a lot of the people who have just come into the Labour Party
are on the left.
Yeah, exactly, because the selection committees wanted to or were forced by the Central Party to pick these people. So that makes life a lot more difficult. I would actually say that if I'm not too sure how he's felt about the other kings, but someone like, or at least the politics of actual West Streeting could do well, because he's quite good on the media.
I like West Streeting personally, but maybe that's just coming from a suburban Londonite. I don't know how he play up north.
Yeah, that's my concern, as it were.
He's very. I mean, we have to, in the next election. I'm not saying me and Tom are not members of the Labour Party. No. But the reality is, as long as a good centrist leader is put in place in Labour, for the first time in my adult life, I'd probably end up voting for Labour for a Labour candidate in the next election, depending on if the Lib Dems get their act back together or not.
And for me, I probably wouldn't end up voting Labour
absolutely not. No.
Not under a lot of circumstances, possibly apart from Blair in '97, just because of the massive contrast. But I want to get to the point where you actually have someone who is a government in waiting that's actually ready that people can actually vote for, because otherwise you don't have a functioning democracy.
You can't go on with a single party's national leadership forever.
The longer that goes on, the worse the Tory party will get. The more lazy they'll get, the more...
And also, the more they'll tear themselves apart as well.
Yes, because they'll believe it will become more of a...
As happened in the 90s with Thatcher and May's government, and Major's government.
Exactly. And you had everyone trying to vie for what they thought was the rightful crown and sort of natural party of government and whatnot.
Are we the party of free trade? Are we the party of protectionism?
Yeah.
Are we pro-EU? Are we anti-EU?
Should we liberalise our social policies?
Yes.
Or keep a social...
All these issues that destroyed the Tory party tore it apart in the 90s, could tear it apart in the next, if there's no credible leader and no Labour winning the next election or two, it could tear it apart in about probably 5 to 10 years' time.
And we've also got the new thing of the sort of Cummings idea of the ideological stand of completely revamping and redoing the civil service versus the sort of more establishment Tory figures who don't want to do that, particularly people who come from the civil service themselves.
Do you mean Cummings kind of, outsider meets slave trade, new acquisition for people in public service posts?
Well, yeah, I think he effectively wants to gut the idea of the civil service and make it, in his view, a lot more efficient, a lot more workable, more like a private business, and actually a lot more
effective. In
his
eyes, wouldn't that just mean stripping it apart?
Probably, yeah. He's very he's got a lot of rhetoric behind that, but mainly because he's not an elected politician, he doesn't actually come out and say what that would entail. Or at least I haven't come across that. And that's what worries me about it. It's like, I don't, on principle, I completely get where he gets, because I've seen how public sector works, and it is a lot less efficient than the private industry on a lot of occasions. But it's about how you do that without completely fucking up the idea of the institution of a civil service, which is a fundamentally conservative idea. Of not screwing around with institutions too much that you throw the baby out with the bathwater, as it were. So that's a little bit of concerning for me, even though I say on principle, on the sort of surface level, I can see where he's coming from.
I mean, he's a retarded advert. I mean, looking for outsiders and weirdos. But what he was doing, he was essentially hiding the fact within that he was actually just asking for people who could just work all week and all weekend, no days off, no nights off. So essentially, he's kind of he's either asking for a lose with no life, or he's asking for a bit of slave labour.
And I think he's asking basically that.
Good luck in the fucking civil service with that. I mean, obviously, he wants to strip the civil service of natural civil servants, because I know civil servants. Away from being ideologically pretty fucking left wing, I mean, they're so deep rooted in the idea of fair amount of time off. This is maximum hours spent in work. This is how much, the general what we think of as being things we think of as being very typical French civil servants are actually very much still the way our civil service works, which is we will only work 40 hours a week, very strict, very union kind of protected.
Well, I think this is a good time to draw a distinction between civil servants and people that work in the public sector.
Yeah.
Because that type of attitude wouldn't fly when you're a teacher.
Yes.
If you need to mark books and you're not getting paid for marking those books, it doesn't matter. You've got to mark those damn books.
I mean, I know some civil servants, for example, that work in the DWP, quite high up, and they're very much married to that old idea of sort of union protection of civil servants. And I think that might be what Cummings... It's an ideological thing with Cummings where he's probably trying to strip that apart.
Well, I think, as I say, I can see where that would go, particularly when it comes to sacking people for miscompetence. Because it is nigh on impossible to do that in the civil service and mostly throughout the public sector. Yeah. But particularly in the civil
you just get moved about. I know stories where people will absolutely fuck up, do something wrong, so, look, things that could endanger people. Yeah. And they just get moved to like a different council.
Oh yeah, well, I've had that with dealing with people from with HMRC. Yeah, I won't go into the specifics for sort of confidentiality reasons, but we've dealt with inspectors before, and they've been absolutely useless. And the next time we hear about them, it's like, oh, we've got a new inspector. It's like, oh yeah, that guy got promoted, and it's like, but how? Like, he was so bad. Like, I knew more about fucking VAT than that guy.
But how the fuck did we get on the Cummings? What was that about?
It was.
We were talking about populism, maybe using populism for Labour using populism as a way of getting back into power. Which
it could be an interesting political strategy. Actually, getting back to the sort of Labour leadership, whoever becomes it, particularly for someone like Starmer, who actually got his knighthood by working within the establishment. I believe he was one of the head prosecutors, wasn't it? Yeah. So he could actually be the champion of the civil service.
Yes.
And sort of say, don't let Cummings, Johnson administration gut what we've got, and actually stand up against that.
I think here's the thing though, particularly again in the north, I think we're in a place where talking positively about the civil service and civil servants is not a popular thing now. People don't identify with the civil service and civil servants anymore. I mean, just look at the whole Brexit issue.
Very true. I mean, that was one of the things that I think turned a lot of people off it, because there was a lot. But one of the main reasons why there were so many leaks in the negotiations was because they were coming from lower down civil servants who have, as you sort of pointed out, are quite left leaning ideologically, but are also extremely pro EU in a lot of aspects. Because the EU, as we probably both agree, is very, very essentially a lot more based around the concept of a European civil service than it is against the sort of outer institutions of government.
Sure, yeah. I've gone dead. I'm literally, my mind's gone to a blank for a moment. I actually had a continuing point, which was, what are the elections? I mean, again, we're 5 years away from the next election, but I mean,
well, I would say 4.5. Because I reckon Boris is going to move back to summer, and he won't want to extend it, because that would be a little bit. Okay,
so we're 4.5 years away. But what could, I mean? Okay, it all depends on on this Labourship debate. On this Labour leadership debate.
That's the new name. The Labourship.
The Labourship.
We promise we won't think again.
What happens between now and the next election basically depends on what happens in the Labour leadership.
Yes.
Going on to a point I kept kind of hinting at earlier, I actually have a theory that Corbyn and Momentum basically essentially are vying to not have Corbyn step down and to keep him on as leader for as long as they can. I mean, the actual membership itself now, and basically the membership itself now of the Labour Party, who's part of Momentum, are all saying the same thing now. They're no longer throwing their hats or supporting any prospective left-wing potential leaders. No, they're still saying Corbyn needs to stay in place. John Landsman, the actual founder of Momentum, is saying the same thing. If you notice, in the last 3 weeks, we've had quite a few Labour MPs now throw their hats in the ring for the leadership. Not a single one, not even the ones tipped to do so, have entered the race. No Corbynites, no left-wingers.
No.
Long Bailey, who is kind of the left-wing favourite, and I say left-wing favourite because looking at that poll, she's going by YouGov, she's not the favourite.
No, not by... But she hasn't even got a quarter of the party's support in the first round.
No.
Which is very interesting.
So, and she was tipped as being the big, left-wing star. She hasn't even entered the race yet.
No, she has kind of launched what might be her brand. She's got this patriotic progressivism, which is clearly a sort of nod and a wink to the fact that people didn't think that Jeremy Corbyn was
patriotic.
Which is understandable.
He felt like, and to be fair, this is totally true, because again, I know a lot of people from the sort of the left and the metropolitan left particularly. There's a disconnect between them and the country in the sense that literally they don't have much of a connection to Britain.
Yes,
and I know British left wingers who will say, I'm not British. I'm a citizen of the world. I'm European.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I understand why they think that, because they're from London.
Yes, so they don't really have.
I sometimes struggle feeling, this English, for example.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is something that happened about in the summer last year, I think it was, where John Cleese got into a little bit of hot water, council culture, whatever you want to call it, when he said that London doesn't feel like an English city. And I'm like, but if you go to any other English cities, even the big ones like Manchester, it has a very different feel than London does. Don't get me wrong, I love London, I love being in the city, I wouldn't want to move anywhere else, but it doesn't feel like an English city compared to other things. I would just think...
it's literally simply a matter of just how big it is and the size.
Yes.
It attracts people from all over the world.
Yeah.
It has different cultures vying.
Yeah.
It's if you've grown up here, it's hard to feel English, because you go, of course I'm English, of course I... and then you think into it and you go, oh, hang on, what about me away from the language I speak? How am I connected to someone in Blackburn or in Chepstow? What about me is British or English? I suppose I'm British by nationality, but like... And then you start to think, oh, fuck, I'm in line with the hard left. I don't reject being English, but I just don't feel particularly English.
It's strange, because it is something that's outside. Like, I was in my dad's family are from Plymouth, and over the Christmas period we went down there. And one of the things that you sort of notice when you go down to cities like that is there's a very sense of pride in the city of Plymouth.
Yeah.
And there's sort of signs everywhere, and everyone obviously supports the local football team and everything.
Yep.
But you don't really get that sort of pride of London, apart from when other people start bashing London.
Well, here's the funny thing. There's a real big disconnect between... If we're just I hate saying this, I hate calling English or British people natives, because it is racist, let's be honest. Because it kind of suggests that only white English people are English, and that people who were born here who are, say, black or Asian are not. But the point I'm making is...
I would say indigenous is probably a little bit better.
I think it's still wrapped up in the same connotations as well. And again, I'm not politically correct, there's something weird about it. It's normally the people that speak in those terms that make it, to me, feel a bit...
If you're talking on a purely scientific level, then I think
then it is correct. Speaking at a scientific level, or even an anthropological level, fine.
But on a cultural level, we shouldn't really make the distinction.
I mean, because but point, who you just say that, but the point being, if you are someone from London, like maybe like me or like Tom, who, if you're actually from London, you don't tend to identify as being... At first, from London, you identify either with the general region of London you're from, or the even more micro level, the borough or district you're from.
Yes.
So, most people born and bred in London feel like that. They don't feel connected. They won't say I'm a Londoner. They'll say, at most, they'll say, oh, I'm an East Londoner, I'm a South Londoner, or they'll say, I'm from Waltham Forest, I'm from Lambeth, I'm from Chingford, I'm from Croydon.
And you see that in the media a lot of the time. Like there'll be, if there's a story, for example, in Ilford, on the local news, say someone got stabbed or something, it will say in Ilford, and it won't explain that Ilford's in London. It almost like assumes that everyone outside London knows that where Ilford is.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, but I'm sure that most people outside of London don't know where Ilford is.
Yeah, the same as how most people outside of Birmingham don't know where Spark Hill is.
No, exactly.
But like, the point I'm making is that, and then you obviously, if you speak to people who are from outside of London, who are English but from outside London, I don't want to use the term hipsters, but they are hipsters. People normally they've either come from other areas of the southeast, they've come from Hampshire, they've come from Oxfordshire.
People who come to London to join the metropolitan elite.
Absolutely. I mean, as much as that's a joke, absolutely, yeah. They are the ones who identify with London and Londoners because, again, they've not grown up here. They don't think of London as being this place that is, 70 miles up and down, 50 miles across.
Yeah.
They don't think of it as, oh, no, it's a fucking county. They think of it as being a town because these guys are from small towns or very small cities in, again, Hampshire, Cambridgeshire, Oxfordshire. I'm using those three county examples because whenever I speak to these people, they're always from those three fucking counties. I don't know why that is, but... they tend to be the ones identify with London, even though they're not from London, and that's normally how people not from London. The people from London, they do not identify with the wider city because it's just too big.
Yeah,
it's too big to identify. I've never been to fucking Carl Shorten. I've never been to. I've never been to Sutton. I've never been to St Mary's. No, I've been to St Mary's Cray. Point being, there's a lot of this city I've never been to because it's fucking 40 miles away.
Yeah. I mean, you must get this as well when you're sort of like on a coach, particularly coming from London, Victoria to anywhere outside of the country, outside of the city even. There was I went through Golders Green in the summer.
Yeah,
I've never been to Golders Green. I knew what it was. A very
not a great example for me because I know North and Northwest London very well.
Yeah, you're a bit more North London, and I'm a bit more.
Yeah, and I know Golders Green very well, and I had a lot of friends growing up around that area. So so Golders Green's not a great example, but I know what you mean. If you're not from there, looking around there would be like a totally new experience.
Exactly,
and that's even if you're from London.
Yes, and it is. You do get very, very different vibes. Like my brother lives in West London now.
Yeah,
and he will always tell me what's different between living in North East London and living in West London.
Yeah,
and I prefer living in North East London, but he fucking loves living down there.
Where do you live?
Putney.
Okay, fair enough. Putney, I've only been to Putney like 2 or 3 times. It's a beautiful place, but again, it feels very alien.
It is. It feels completely even compared to the nice areas of North East London, compared to like Wanstead or somewhere.
Yeah,
it feels completely different because there's just that extra level of money.
And this is kind of why and again, I'm going to do a Londoner thing here. Okay, again, I never call myself a Londoner. I'm just trying to make this point. This is why I always I resent when people from a long way outside of London refer to London as the London bubble, even though there's an aspect to London of that, is because London is such a huge place. How the fuck can it be a bubble when there are places I just don't know within it?
Yeah.
I
think a more accurate term would be, particularly for politics, is like the Westminster bubble.
Yeah.
When you've got the media, the people who are actually in it, the aides, the spads and whatnot. Yeah. That's quite a good term to do it. But the London bubble is something which
it's way too big.
Yeah.
People from Bromley do not know people from Edgware.
No. I think that what we might trying to be hinting on, which I do think is legitimate, is the sort of mentality that you get from certain people from London when you ever say something which they might disagree with.
Yeah.
They sometimes will get this look on their face of, you actually hold that opinion?
Yeah, so what you're saying is the London Liberals, the London Liberal mindset.
Yeah.
Which, again, you have to remember, going by the Brexit vote... just under half, 40% of this country is not part of that. 40% of this city is not part of that bubble.
Yeah, and speaking as a Leave voter in London, whenever you do meet other Leave voters, which we don't actually advertise because most people, particularly young people, don't shout about it. It is almost like meeting someone from a secret society. It's like, oh my god, yes, we can actually talk about.
Going to most areas, Zone 4 outwards. Bit of context to what Zone 1 to 6 is. They are the travel zones within London. Go to most areas, Zone 4 to 6, they are Leave areas. Then, okay, that's not necessarily true because only 5 boroughs in London voted to leave. But you'll meet a hell of a lot more Leavers. Actually, you meet a lot of Leavers in central London because guess what? The estates, guess what, are made up of Leavers.
Yeah. Particularly estates from sort of, as you say, the sort of white British background and whatnot, and also people from non-European
Caribbean backgrounds, Asian backgrounds.
The Asian people really liked the idea of Brexit, at least at the time. I think they might have walked it back a little bit, but they still liked the idea because they thought it was going to open up the door
to Asian, which was
hilariously
going
ironic
to happen.
Yeah, when you consider what most people in the north voted for Leave for.
Because to be fair, as much as I always say, look, no one promised the electorate, if they voted to leave, that we'd send people home, but they did promise the Asian and black, black Afro Caribbean electorate, that we'd have more people come from those areas.
Yes.
No, we weren't. That was never going to happen.
No, I mean, I was watching a video of LBC's top 10 of the decade,
Yep.
and it had an interview pre-Brexit referendum with Nigel Farage and James O'Brien.
Yeah. With James O'Brien, he's perfectly pink salmon shirt.
Yeah, sort of doing the whole sort of young Jeremy Paxman routine. Farage was literally made the point of why should a Indian engineer and someone from New Zealand doctor have a less of a right to come in
Than a Polish plumber or whatever he said, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to be fair to Farage, without ever gaining power, that's effectively what's happened, because Boris wants to implement, if he actually does, a points-based Australian immigration.
Which, by the way, by all measures, any Australian will tell you the Australian points-based system, it doesn't hamper immigration, it actually furthers it. Because reality is, most foreign offices and most home offices will basically end up, bit by bit, will just bring down the criteria for what they need. Because at the end of the day, there are sectors of this country that just need people.
Oh yeah, we need to nurses, for instance. We need to have basically, as long as you've got a qualification as a nurse, you should be bloody let in, because we're desperate need for nurses.
But so if you really think the points-based system is going to be an end to immigration, no, it's not.
It's more about, I think this is the whole.
I think Australia actually has naturally. I mean, it has. I think it actually has a bigger share of first-generation immigrants than we do. I think it's the one above us. Yeah.
I think Canada might have the most, because Canada's very, very pro.
I think it goes America, Russia's second, Canada's third. It's either Canada or Saudi Arabia third. Then it's Australia. Then it's us and Saudi, I think, maybe around the same position.
See, what we should be aiming for is to be the top of the list of people that can that come from different countries that then obtain British citizenship. Because if you're talking like country, Saudi Arabia is a good example. But they just don't give citizenship to people outside their country. They don't want it.
I mean, let's be honest. Saudi Arabia are racist as fuck. They don't like anyone that's
completely.
They don't like anyone that's not Arab. And even within the Arab, if you're from the west of the Arabian Peninsula, you're seen as scum. As opposed to if you're from the east.
They still had a castrated slave trade in like the 40s.
Yeah,
it's just completely ridiculous.
I mean, they essentially still have slavery.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, if you're from the countries of either South Asia or like East Africa, you are. If you turn up there to work, they take your passport away and off you go. You're off to die on a building site.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point I was trying to make is that I think that would be, it's a good indication of how we can properly actually assimilate and integrate people by getting people to actually want to commit to having a British passport and become British. That's what I would love to have.
As much as it kind of kills me to say this, because I never like to copy Austria in regards to immigration policy, I think Austria has a partially good system. For the moment, it just exists for people from outside the EU, because obviously they're an EU member. That if you show, for the minute it's 10 years, and 10 years is probably a bit too long. Maybe I think they're trying to. Even their government accepts they need to go back to their old 6-year system.
6-7 years.
Which is you have to go through certain hoops of showing you are an integrated member of Austrian society.
Yeah, no, I think that's true.
And to be fair to Austria, it is a good example of when when immigrants to Austria do integrate quite well. I think partly what helps in Austria as well is most of their immigrants are from neighbouring countries, so it's very easy integration.
Yes.
Most of those people will speak German before they get there anyway, and they have cultures that are essentially the same. They're probably mostly Catholic and...
but they're the same country anyway, aren't they? Just make them one. Oh, actually, don't do that.
No,
let's not do that.
No, roll the tanks back from Poland. We're not doing but I think you've got partially a good system there, which is not hoops. I don't mean a mean system, but a system of showing, hey, you've accumulated this much while working here. You take part in this part of British society. Hey, it's been 6 years. Bang. I think that's a good idea.
I think it's got to be a little bit more, because there's sort of I think we were talking about earlier about how people don't identify with Britain and don't identify with the country. And I think there does need to be a bit more of that to have obtained citizenship, as it were.
I would say, going back to that, I would say that London probably doesn't help with people from outside of the UK not feeling integrated in British society, because obviously a lot of people, when they tend to come to the UK, they either tend to fall into their own community, or they'll tend to be friends with a lot of people from different communities but never really come across sort of British people or British people not from London.
There's a mentality that the idea of sort of turn of the century New York is the ideal. We had Little Italy and Little Cuba and all that, and I would say that it's not what we want.
But what could contradict me there is when you look at a lot of towns in the north. Actually, there are a lot of communities up there, like particular towns that are either have a heavy South Asian population, where they've got an even bigger issue where just no one from those communities will not interact with anyone outside, and if they do interact, it tends to be aggression on either side.
And there also tends to be a lot more. It's a lot more socially conservative in the context of the country they're coming from, which from our country is completely off the chart when it comes to social conservatism. And it does seem to be that people who want that type of life will move up to north, and more liberal-minded people from outside of the EU tend to come to London.
You take a town like Oldham or Burnley, where there's like a big issue with, again, the local white population hate the Pakistani community, and the Pakistani community equally hates the white population. The only time they tend to interact is when they're fighting each other.
And it is a absolute massive shame, but I think as I said, I'm not too sure how we would learn how to do that, but the only way I would think that we would be able to do that is by learning from countries that have been successful at that. Mainly the Americans. The Americans do it better than anyone, what I would say. In certain cities, not every city, but in certain cities, they are able to really, they put basically, to take a misused thing, but they put America first, as it were. And I don't mean that on a sort of foreign policy level. I'm saying you are American first. So we should have a moral context.
You do hear from a lot of people, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, you still have communities that fall within themselves there. I mean, and not even just within LA and New York. I mean, they're big...
I think they do it a lot better than most European nations.
Europe's never a great example, particularly like France and Belgium, in terms of...
we're better than them.
We're definitely better than them.
But we could always do a little bit more on that. And hopefully, and this is always one of the sort of backroom, it's kind of pie in the sky hopes for the effect of Brexit that might have that sort might be in the way of it. And I get that that's a long shot and pie in the sky, but it is one of the things I hope might be able to do it, because we could redefine ourselves as a nation that's independent outside the EU and whatnot. But that, as I say, that's probably not going to happen. But I wish it would.
The reality is, we are, whether we leave EU or not, we are still an integral part of the European setup.
Yeah, of course, we're still.
We will still be. Look at Switzerland, for example.
Yes, but one of their national things is they do define themselves as being sort of independent and neutral.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. But they still are essential to the European setup in regards to they fucking bank everyone's money.
I was going to say they hold all the gold.
Yes, they are part of the system.
Yes, but they are. We definitely need to be part of the system as well. But you can be part of a system without being integral to the system.
Yes. We're about 43 minutes in. I think because we've gone off on a bit of a tangent, we're going to move on to the other topic, which obviously is the assassination of Soleimani. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that everybody needs to, particularly people who aren't directly involved with it, needs to sort of take a step back and see how we got to this stage, as it were.
Yep.
And I don't mean going back to sort of 1979 and doing a play-by-play, but particularly in the last couple of weeks, because what I'm really struck by is the sort of contrast in media coverages. Between your Fox Newses and your Daily Wires, and between your BBCs and the Guardians and whatnot. Where if you watch the news the news on the right, particularly the American right,
they're obviously in favour.
They're not just in favour, but they're basically comparing this to the assassination of Bin Laden.
Right. Which, by the way, is not the same.
No, it's not. Not even Baghdadi, who a couple of months ago. It's completely not, because those people weren't extremely high up members of a nation state.
Yes.
That's what the major difference is, and they're ignoring that fact in the right-wing media. Similarly, the fact that the American embassy just got attacked 2 days ago is being completely ignored in the left-wing media.
Yeah. Well, okay, saying that, this morning I did hear that supposedly on the ground in Baghdad, that there was going to be an attack on the US Embassy today, and hence a more deadly one than what happened on Thursday, hence why the Americans moved to take Osmani out.
This is Trump's argument that it was a preemptive strike.
To be honest, I'm torn on this. Reason being, if this was just a matter of Osmani's in Baghdad, Osmani is a threat, but he's not an imminent threat. I mean, he's not an imminent threat right now. We're just going to take him out while we've got the chance. Then I'd be totally against this because you've just ratcheted up the heat for no reason. If there was a very, very good, probable threat coming to US citizens and even Iraqi citizens in the coming days, and this was immediate and this was substantiated, then I'm torn. I would have to sort of bite my fan and say, all right, go ahead. So I'm torn on this.
Yeah, I
don't think this does anyone any good.
Yeah, no.
But I understand maybe why it had to be done.
It's one of those things where you've got Iran being more and more sort of incrementally aggressive over the last couple of years, both in Iraq and towards
Syria
America, and you could go back and say that was because Trump did the Iran deal and all that, and you could keep going back and back and back and back. There's just no point in us sitting here doing that. But I think it's a lot more nuanced than the narratives that are being spun are actually trying to portray it, and they're trying to portray it as sort of this anti-terrorist, anti-war narrative, and that's the type of when it's really a dovish and hawkish thing.
Here's the thing: I kind of, in my gut, I want to veer on the side that I suppose that what you refer to as the left-wing media are taking, which is this is an outrage. How can this happen? Because look, Osmani is not Bin Laden. He's not al-Baghdadi. He's not a terrorist leader. He is the head of the military for a legitimate, recognised nation. I don't like the Iraqi system. I don't like the I don't like the Iranian government. I don't like the Iranian system. It's a vile dictatorship. It murders people. I don't like Osmani. I don't shed a tear for him. But I mean, he is the leader of a legitimate state you are not at war with.
Yeah, he's definitely...
You've not killed him in theatre.
Yes.
This is not a war.
I mean, even in the sort of terrorist leader thing, there's a kind of element of truth to that.
Which is, he is essentially in charge of all the Shia militias across the Middle East. He's in charge of Hezbollah, he's in charge of Hamas.
Yes, we're talking there about state-sponsored terrorism.
Yeah.
And but the key part of that as well is its state.
Yes.
And what there are consequences to destroying the sovereignty of a nation.
You could argue that Osmani is one of the key people that over the last, let's say, 40 years has actually fucked up the Middle East.
Oh, definitely.
He probably is. If there is one man, as much as we all want to go to where we want to, not we, but people want to shout at, the States, the West.
Yeah,
it's Osmani.
Yeah.
When you realise essentially it was the Iranian uprising in '79. It was the Islamic Revolution that essentially set the Middle East on fire.
Yes.
For the 4 decades to come.
Yeah, this sort of rivalry between the Iranians and the Saudis, which turned into a sectarian thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is really fucked up that region.
It has militarised and armed a load of nations and created a lot of civilian militia, turned civilians into fighters and militias that don't need to exist.
And nowhere is that more obvious than Iraq.
The Islamic Revolution and Osmani becoming this kind of general meets terrorist mastermind. He essentially caused the Lebanese war of the 80s. He essentially caused the Iran-Iraq war.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose you could argue that might not have been him because he might have been a bit too junior at the time.
He's definitely flared up tensions between the Israelis and in a weird way he's
probably partly responsible away from the mullahs themselves. At least militarily, he is probably the one responsible for the militaristic approach taken towards Israel during the 80s.
Oh, certainly.
Obviously the PLO, Black September were operating throughout the 70s, but they were never that powerful an organisation.
Yes. I mean, it's the thing that because of the sort of clerical nature of the upper echelons of the Iranian government, they were always going to need men like Osmani, simply because they don't have this sort of military background. By the very nature of the Islamic Republic of Iraq, they need to have clerics as being their supreme leader who aren't going to be versed.
You're not good. Yeah, the head of state by Sharia law. He can't be an elected official.
No. It needs to be effectively the Shia Pope.
Yes.
Which is it makes an interesting one because they have to delegate, because this what I've been heard him being described as, he's sort of the chairman of the chief joint operations in America, the minister of defense, the secretary of state. He's got so much power in this one position that it's almost like he's the sort of, when it comes to national defense and everything, he is effectively the military dictator. He just doesn't have control over domestic policy.
Yeah.
Which is it should really tell you everything you need to know about the Iranian regime, because they do have a democratically elected president, yet this guy has hardly been mentioned in the last couple of days because it's all been about
what's his name? Guy who took it over exactly after I've forgotten. Anyway, their current president is he is a mullah, isn't he? But obviously not a mullah in the sense of like the Ayatollah of Iran, not in terms of that position, but he is a religious leader.
Yes, they I think what we do is they pick a number of candidates, the mullahs pick a number of candidates, and then basically declare, okay, you can vote for these guys.
Yeah.
And in the last few elections, they have always picked the more moderate one of all of them, ever since they got rid of Ahmadinejad.
Yeah.
Because Ahmadinejad was actually trying to take power away.
I was trying to remember, exactly, President Sportscoat. He was specific. Rouhani. How do I forget Rouhani's name?
Yes.
So Rouhani was seen. I remember when he came to power, when he was seen as his kind of by the outside world as potential, sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Moderate. Yeah. He was seen as this reformist figure.
Yes.
I don't know why.
He was the most reformist of the. I think there's 5 candidates that picked, and he won quite heavily. Yes. Whereas Ahmadinejad was a lot more right-wing, as it was. Right-wing in Iranian.
Right-wing in the Iranian context. Yeah. He was a lot more jihadist. He was literally jihadist. He was very quite. He was a firebrand.
Yes, we're just looking at it now, and it looks like Rouhani took power in 2013.
Was it that long ago now?
Yeah, it's very quite a long time.
I thought it was like maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, it makes sense when you think about it in the context of the American-Iran nuclear deal.
Yeah.
Because what I would imagine, I'm just speculating here, but the timeline does match up, is as soon as this guy was elected by the Iranians, Obama was like, well, we can make a deal with them now because there's a moderate in charge.
Yep.
And as we all know, that didn't last as long as it took to be into drive. As soon as
Trump coming into power.
Or to be fair, any Republican would have got rid of that. It wasn't just
I don't
Trump
know.
thing.
I think with the Trump thing, I think specifically with Trump, he knew that accepting no deal with Iran would have played well to his base. Because whether there would have been a reformist character in office or not, whether they were showing signs of not making nuclear material, I think just pulling away any deal with any kind of ardent Islamic Republic, I think just plays well to.
Yeah, I think it replays well to the entire Republican base, though. Yeah, is what I'm saying. I think it would be if maybe not Mitt Romney because he's quite moderate, but if it'd been Ted Cruz, he would have done the same thing.
Yeah. It was a pretty drastic. Let's be honest. The Iranian regime was still at least working on nuclear material while that was going on.
This sort of falsehood that they were obeying the nuclear deal, it's just like, well, I don't believe that.
And by the way, once the deal was pulled out of, they basically said, "Oh yeah, we were working on nuclear materials anyway."
Yeah, but
okay, so you just shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, because you just lost all credibility.
Yeah,
and this has put the Europeans in a very, very difficult position because they were defending the Iranians for a long time.
They were defending the Iranian deal. They wanted it because you have to remember Iran is not that far from us, and any potential fallout with their immediate neighbours they're not friends with.
Yes.
Is because, for example, next door, we don't talk about this, and it's not very well known in the West. Iran and Azerbaijan, their neighbour, are not particularly friends. They're Shia countries, both of them, but because of the size of the Azeri ethnic population in the north of Iran, as always happens across the world, as soon as there's one national ethnicity, there is a big population in a neighbouring country, there's always ethnic tension.
Yeah.
So because of that, those two countries don't get on, then it's stemmed back to the end of the Soviet Union. So if there ever was a war stemmed between Azerbaijan and Iran, and one of them's a nuclear power, and obviously Russia's on that doorstep as well. The EU just doesn't want that, and also Azerbaijan, for example. I'm just using Azerbaijan as a specific example because Turkey falls into this too. Turkey is no friend of Iran. It's a quite a big Sunni country where Iran's big Shia.
Yes,
these countries are ultimately connected, not just connected, but also border the EU.
I can see that. I think there's also an element within Europe about once you make a deal, then you should stick by that deal, which is a lot. Well, Americans don't have that much because, particularly, it hasn't been verified by Congress, and it's just as the Iran deal was basically signed by the president. Something signed by the president can be reversed by another president. You've got to get it in Congress and through law to actually the president can't fix it.
Yep.
Which I think is the correct way of doing things, but it still makes it more difficult for anything to actually get solidly done in stone if you've got a different person in the White House too that runs Congress.
I know what I think in regards to any kind of supposed revenge that is coming. It's all going to be by proxy.
Oh, definitely. They're not going to attack the Americans directly.
The Iranian army is not going to... The Iranian military is not militarily going to attack the American military or interest. It's going to be by proxy. It will be Hezbollah firing more rockets or setting off more car bombs from southern Lebanon.
Yeah.
It will be Hamas firing more rockets from Gaza. Everything will be played out via Palestine-Israel.
No, unfortunately, I think you're right about that. I think because that plays well with the sort of Iranian base, as it were.
Yeah.
They don't mind Israel being attacked, whereas in Iraq they feel a lot more akin to Iraq because of the sort
which
of
is hilarious when you
Shia
consider they used to
population.
fucking hate each other.
Yes, but I think particularly since ISIS, they've the Shia population of Iraq
Well, I
has gotten a lot
suppose
more.
Iraq is a unique country for any Muslim country on earth, which is pretty much half and half Shia.
Yes, but I think that was possibly, and this is a very it's a high bar to set, but I think it's possibly the worst drawn borders from the colonial age that ever happened.
To be fair, as much as I agree with that on the idea that the borders in the Middle East were pretty badly drawn, yes, I mean, you can say that in regards to, okay, these people are Arabs, these people are Persians, these people are speak this language, they speak that language. At that time in history, when we really weren't when our leaderships were really not used to Islam on a face-to-face level, away from maybe having some colonies out in the Middle East, how the fuck were they supposed to know that these two different sects of Islam, all they knew was people in Iraq, for the most part, whether they be Sunni or Shia, were Arabs. And why would they not get on?
No, I think that's something to take in mind.
The localised Arabic dialects, so why would they not exist in the same country together?
It's also good to keep in mind
because
the fact that...
How do you attach... Sorry to interrupt again, but how do you attach the Sunni, the Shia part of Iraq to Persia or Iran when they're Arab speakers, and there's so much tension within Iran... between the Arab speakers and the Persian majority anyway.
No, it's not easy. I mean, it'd be like trying to sort out Belgium and the Netherlands for a non-European. Try to sort that out and they'd probably get equally as wrong.
By the way, Belgium, the most fucked up political system in the EU, by way of trying to organise itself in Parliament, not by corruption or anything like that, no.
But I think, just quickly going back to the border issue of Iraq, I think it's also worth a piece of the puzzle which is not really talked about that much when we do talk about these issues, is there is condemnation with the appropriate caveats if you're just given of the British and French. But condemnation should also be given to the Ottomans. Because they don't exist anymore, people forget about them, but they ruled that area for 500 fucking years.
They ruled it for a lot longer than anyone in France or Britain did.
And because...
And they're their neighbours.
Yes, and because they collapsed, France and Britain were the only people willing to actually take those over, apart from the Soviets. What you have to remember
about the Ottoman Empire, a lot of it was about Turkic and Sunni superiority.
Yes, exactly.
So they didn't give a shit what happened to the Persian, because you have to remember the Persian speakers were not well treated within the Ottoman Empire, and the same goes for a lot of other linguistic groups that exist within Anatolia.
So even Sarabarics as well weren't very well treated. Just part of a reason why they have this sort of superiority complex. You talk to any person who's lived in that sort of area of the Muslim world, and they really don't like Arabs because they think they're really arrogant.
Absolutely, really funny one. When we were at the height of sort of British Muslims going out to fight for ISIS, they were like, ethnic, I suppose, Bengali or Pakistani kids going out from London or from Birmingham or wherever, and they were getting to Syria fighting for ISIS, and they were complaining that their Arab sergeants were racist and then just treat him like shit and made him do the dog work.
Yeah, because they sort of have this like concept of the more further away you are from Mecca, the less of important Muslim you are.
I think, in all honesty, I just think it's natural, weird, animalistic, human kind of tribalism.
Oh, I'm just saying the underlying justification for it. Bullshit, as much of bullshit as reasons as the sort of white supremacist.
Because, I mean, look, as I just said earlier, I mean, if you're an Arab from Saudi, you tend to look down on Arabs from the likes of Morocco or from Lebanon, because they're not oil state Arabs. They're from the poor Arab states, you know.
Well, they were areas that were conquered by Mohammed and rather than being actual converts.
Obviously, the further away the Arab countries get, so for example Morocco, which is the furthest Arab country from Arabia, the culture is generally more distant from Arab Peninsula culture. It's got a mixture of like native North African Berber and Spanish and sort of culture and Atlantic and Portuguese.
And similar on the opposite when it comes to Pakistan and particularly parts of India. It's
But I don't know. It's a tricky one to figure out.
It is. We're certainly probably not going to figure out all the answers now, but I think it's be vigilant is the only
vigilant.
Thing. Yeah. For the love of God, don't just watch one news source. Watch a variety of news sources, because you are not going to get the full picture by watching one news source.
I don't think it matters at this point, to be honest. I don't think anything that will happen in retaliation to this, it'll be so far down the line. It'll probably be in a few weeks or months' time, and it will be, like I said, by proxy in either in Israel, maybe Syria or Lebanon. And because it will be other actors involved, it will be actors that are not necessarily part of the Iranian state. We won't think about it necessarily firsthand at the time of it being Iran. Part of Iran. It will be, like I said, it will be a Hamas bombing in Israel. It will be Hezbollah, I don't know, going in and shooting up a Kurdish base somewhere. I don't know.
No, I think you're right, and that'll actually give the opportunities, because now the ball is in the Iranians' court if they want to escalate or de-escalate. And I think you're right, as they will do an attack. They have to, after what just happened, from a sort of face-saving point of view. Once they do it, it will give the Americans an opportunity to not go after it, because whatever they do, they're not going to assassinate a member of the American government. Are they?
I've just thought about this now. What do you think about the idea that maybe the Iranian military already in Syria could probably just double down on the Kurds?
Oh,
they could try and get at the West by doubling down on the Kurds.
That, I mean, if it had been just before, because they just pulled out as well, so there is actually the opportunity, isn't there?
Yeah.
And they could possibly even attack Turkey, because they're still nominally at least allies. Which that really would be an escalation, a lot more than just firing a few rockets into Israel.
Iran and Turkey coming to blows is a bigger step up than actually Americans taking out one of their lead generals, because anything that America does is not going to get a first-hand response by them.
No, they're not. As I say, they're not going to attack anything more than a US compound or an embassy, and they've already done that
by proxy actors.
Yeah, but of doing that, then Trump would be forced to either abandon or go to, not full scale, but certainly put thousands, possibly tens of thousands of troops on the ground to defend American interests.
Yeah,
and if he doesn't do that,
and in Turkey, there's a lot of American interests.
Yeah. And he's kind of boxed himself into a corner, trying to portray himself as the strong man.
And also,
Turkey's
not the best example, because I think Turkey is militarily quite superior to Iran. As much as we think of Iran as his big player and militarily, most of his actions are undertaken by proxies, and actually he's supposed to have a really, like Russia, it's supposed to have a really, really top-down, quite disorganised and that's what I'm looking for. Sort of, I can't think of the term, but quite a top-down, quite disorganised army.
Right.
It's supposed to be quite ragtag.
Okay.
Just like the Russian army. So, and also we are forgetting about Russia as well, because Russia is a semi-ally of Iran.
It is, but I think this is the sort of reason why a lot of, in my opinion, why a lot of the hawkish people think that invading Iran would be easier than people think, because people say, oh, well, World War III, because the Russians will get drawn into it.
The Russians wouldn't get involved on behalf of the Iranians, as much as they're allies, because it's easy. It's kind of a by default thing.
Yeah. The Russians only get involved in places where the Americans have unilaterally said we're not getting involved in, like Syria. The
problem being, where we might be wrong, is you have to remember, like, Russia is a neighbour of Iran, and they share the Caspian Sea. So if the war was to spill over into neighbouring states, maybe Azerbaijan, maybe Armenia or somewhere like that, Russia would get involved. But there'd be no reason to spill over into those places, so I don't know why. Yeah.
No, I would say that it's extremely unlikely that the Americans would invade Iran, but even if it happened, I can't see the Russians going hell for leather.
I mean, if you invade,
they might secure the border a hell of a lot.
If you invaded Iran, you'd be there for years to come.
Yeah, because if you look at the size of Iran and Iraq, and you can't hold Iraq, so how are you going to hold Iran? It would be, and also
Iran spans continents. I mean, it's Iran is to the Middle East what Turkey is to Europe. It straddles both Asia. A big chunk of its landmass is actually in South Asia, but also has a big landmass in the Middle East as well. Blah, blah.
I think the thing that people are getting a little bit confused about is that, yes, it would take a long time to hold Iran, and it would be a lot more like Vietnam and even more Iraq.
It'd be harder than Iraq.
Yeah, it would be a lot harder than Iraq. But the initial beating of the government and the army would only take a few months.
Yeah,
but the actual holding of it would be.
It wouldn't be as quick as Iraq.
No,
it took days to take down the Iraqi army under Saddam.
Yes,
because most of them just defected anyway.
Yeah,
you'd have that same issue in Iran. A lot of people would just defect either way.
Because you can't stop the American military machine.
Well, yeah, because once the borders become porous, they'll just fuck off anyway.
Yeah, the only country that could actually, I think, there's only probably 2 countries in the world that could possibly actually withstand an American, like governments in the world that could withstand an American invasion.
Yeah,
and that is actually China and Russia, due to their size, more than anything.
Do you know what? I disagree on Russia. China maybe, not Russia. Russia, you only have to remember that, like, its population really is only based in one part of the country. It's a vast expanse of nothing.
But that's the thing, but they can move into nothing. That's what they did. That's what they did in Napoleon. That's what they did with Hitler. They kept on moving into the nothing.
I mean, Russia mainly is a country built up of white Slavs moving into nothing.
Yeah,
essentially moving into nomadic Mongolic territories.
Yeah. And the supply lines for the Americans would get weaker and weaker and weaker the more they had to move in.
The Bering Strait. Okay, the Bering Strait's a pain in the ass because you've got ice, but the Bering Strait, I mean, Alaska and Canada are a lot closer to Russia than you expect.
True, but it's sort of middle of thing anyway.
Yeah, but again, I'm not saying the invasion of Russia would be easy. I'm saying, and again, as I said earlier, the Russian military is disorganised. Is a really disorganised. I mean, people who don't really know would think, it's obviously this huge military force. Its numbers are bolstered by people who have to join on conscription. They're there for 6 months. For about 4 of those 6 months are in hospital ill with different illnesses due to their training. And literally, I mean, this is the first-hand experience of a lot of people who've been in the Russian army.
Jesus.
And then by the time their service is over, they're still in hospital, and they leave the army anyway because they don't want to fucking stay in. Most of them never fire a gun while they're in.
That's not a very good army.
Yeah. The Russian army is shit.
But the fact of the matter is, because they've got that massive nuclear arsenal, they know it's not really going to get invaded anytime soon.
I think we're going to end there.
Yeah, that's good. Space for now. We've gotten to a theoretical wargaming.
Yeah. Should we play a special game of like theoretical Risk one day?
That would be good. Yeah.
Like we just sit here playing Risk. Like you're Iran. We get someone else who's Russia, someone who's the States, and someone who's, for good measure, I don't know, Britain or something.
Or poor that person.
Yeah. But just to say, when we was talking about the Labour leadership debate, did I mention I know I mentioned it before we started the podcast, did I mention my theory on why I believe the momentum is trying to hold on to a Corbyn leadership?
No, I don't think you did. No.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't think I mentioned it earlier on. So Long Bailey obviously hasn't put her hat in the ring yet. She's tipped as the momentum favourite and the left's favourite in the party to become the next leader. Well, she hasn't put her hat in the ring yet. It's been through like 2 or 3 weeks. A lot of the centrists who were tipped have now put their hats in. why is not a single left-winger or Momentum member put their hat in? Well, we've got John Landsman, who's the founder of Momentum, is actually now he's actually calling for or trying to back up his point that Corbyn should stay on as leader. Individual members of Momentum, it seems to be that the consensus is that Corbyn should stay on as leader. And also, we've not heard anything since Corbyn announced he'd be stepping down on election night. In 3 weeks, we haven't heard anything from Corbyn about his resignation to come.
No, he's acting like it never happened.
And now yesterday, he's screaming at Johnson that he needs to be briefed on what happened in Iran.
Yeah. Just a sort of tangent, it is actually quite scary that they didn't even let us know that that strike was going to happen.
It doesn't surprise me.
No, it doesn't, but even if George W. Bush was in charge, he
would have, but that's when we had a closer relationship between Bush and Blair.
Yeah.
You have to remember, they were friends.
Yeah, whereas the sort of the rhetoric and the photo opportunities between Trump and Johnson are literally just that, apparently.
Yeah. Literally that. So yeah, I have a suspicion that, well, it's not just a suspicion. Momentum has claimed it. They want essentially Corbyn to stay on.
Yeah, including Corbyn's brother, I think we mentioned before the podcast.
Yes. So Corbyn's brother's also called for it. So I think they're browbeating or strong arming any potential left wing candidate from coming on. From throwing their hats in.
It's absolutely crazy considering the person who's most looking forward to Jeremy Corbyn not being leader is actually Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes,
because he never wanted it in the fucking first
never
place.
wanted. But I think that's part of it. I think it's an ideological thing. I think they'd rather have a party that was led by the left, the ideological left, who was not in power, than a ruling Labour Party who was centrist and protected kind of the free market.
Yeah, I think Alan Johnson made this point on election night, and he was bang on the money about that. They'd rather play sort of theoretical games of socialist utopia.
Well, because they go on about during the election how they lost the election, but the argument was won. Well, okay, bollocks, because no, you obviously didn't win the argument if no one voted for the argument.
Yeah, I think that's one of the quotes of the decade, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling. Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. They're deluded. But I do believe that the very fact that no one has put their hat in the ring, and you have to remember, when you look at these who has thrown a hat in the ring, I mean, the most left-wing is Thornberry, and economically, she's not left-wing at all.
No. And she really doesn't appeal to the left-wing of a party, I don't think.
No, not at all. She has the kind of... She might have the vote of the young left wing, the London sort of young metropolitan left wing, because she's very, as you would say, kind of social justice warrior-y.
Yeah.
And obviously, as we know, a lot of the young side Momentum, the very kind of, again, young urbanite, they don't really care that much about economics. It's mainly just kind of a social justice thing.
Yeah, definitely. It's more of a sort of progressivism of the mind.
Yeah. So where Thornberry is very... is economically she's very centrist. I mean, she's I suppose she's somewhat a Blairite. Socially, I mean, she's as far out there as what as anyone would say. Let's say the Squad in America, or so she has that going for her as a Labour leader. But she, saying that, I mean, we've just seen the YouGov poll and she came in at like 6% the vote, which I'm happy about.
Yeah, I think everyone should be happy about that, because having Emily Thornberry would only power Johnson. It would only make Johnson's question times even more.
Something else I forgot to bring up as well over the last couple of days, and I haven't mentioned to you. Have you noticed that there's been a big call, and I think it seems to be by either trolls online from the right, or it seems to be trolls on radio from the right, who I think are pretending to call and make a groundswell for Diane.
You even said that.
For Diane Abbott.
Yeah, this is a big troll.
Yes.
This is a big thing that was started off on the sort of trolly pro-Brexit parts of YouTube.
I thought so.
Yeah.
I literally have just seen it. Like I heard a guy who called into LBC maybe 2 or 3 days ago.
On what's her face? Sheila Fogarty's
yes,
program. Yeah,
and said and said we need Diane Abbott. And then
he kept his fucking cool so
he kept his cool. But as I could tell as to why he was kind of a right-wing troll, is one where he was calling from. I think he was calling from Bolsover, which is, I mean, a very un-Diane Abbott part of the country.
Yeah, pretty much.
And two, he never gave a reason as to why.
Yeah, he couldn't even think of one to make up.
Yeah.
Sheila Fogarty did quite well as to keeping her cool and trying to treat him with a minuscule of respect.
Because I think she knew as well.
Yeah, but she didn't want to kind of call it out because then it looks bad on LBC for letting him through.
If you have any modicum of understanding of how the current political breakdowns go, the area this guy was calling from is just not a left-wing area in any way.
No, it's the area that has been... no, I'm thinking of somewhere else, I think. I'm thinking of Boswell. No, it's just... if you listen to it, it is quite funny, because you can kind of... if you really listen, you can kind of tell he's stifling his laughing.
Yes. Yeah, he's on the verge of laughing.
Yeah.
But also, I've gone on to, the usual kind of... the most kind of explosive comment section of certain websites, places like the Yahoo comment section... Yeah, again, there seems to be a load of people saying Abbott for leader, Abbott for leader. Yeah. And it can be nothing but trolls.
Yeah, it is, because there's no one, least of all Diane Abbott,
no one, even in the left, actually wants Diane Abbott as leader.
They recognise that whilst they might respect her for what she had, and she, to be fair, being the sort of first black female prominent person in British politics is an admirable achievement.
It's an admirable achievement, but she has lost her mind in the last 2 years.
Yes.
For example, she's not been in the public eye for about 2 years now.
No,
and
that's on purpose.
When she did end up being photographed a few months ago, or maybe a month or so ago, she had the wrong shoes on. She had one shoe that was different to the other. And
then someone on Momentum then photoshopped the fact that she had... it's like, no, she has the right shoes on. Or was it the fact that she posted something else which was clearly taken on before, trying to cover up for the fact that she had it on. And it's like... Some people are very, very mean-spirited.
It might be something quite sad, which is she might have some kind of dementia, or which people I think are starting to suspect she might have dementia.
Yeah, which is nothing to laugh about, but in all seriousness, it's also something that a politician elected to the country should let their constituents know about.
The problem is, if she let go to Hackney rallies, she'll go to any other Labour member anyway. But I mean, she's got to be one of the longest standing MPs in London.
I would imagine so, possibly apart from Corbyn himself.
Corbyn's what, 78, 79?
Yeah.
I would say she's been there since 83, I would say.
It must be around that time.
Let's have a Ruddy Well hook.
Yeah.
Diane Abbott. But I just... It'd be the end of an era when she finally does step down from Hackney, but she will have to. 87. Okay, so the election after that,
which is still that's 32 years that she's been in sitting there.
I'm just seeing something now that's just been published by the Express in the last few hours. Labour feud: how Jess Phillips clashed with Diane Abbott. I told her to fuck off.
It doesn't surprise me.
Is it just me, right? Do you think Phillips is trying to, or someone's trying to position her to take the Northern vote back? They're trying to make her the anti... Even though she's a centrist, they're trying to make her the anti-metropolitan.
Yeah, I think she's far enough.
Even though she's from Birmingham, which is a metropolitan area, and it
is, but it's not London.
No,
and as long as somewhere's not London, it can be.
As long as she has a northern accent.
Yeah, pretty much. I would say that she's definitely trying to position herself as an outsider. Yeah. But I mean, to be fair to her, she came third in that poll. Yeah. She's the only person
you can come from behind from third.
Yes, and also she's a backbench MP. She's not been on the front bench, so she's not actually been on a lot of media.
She's still a relatively unknown force.
Exactly, and for her to be that high up is quite an achievement for her.
I think maybe she can. I mean, I think one thing that might have it going for her in the north is she stood up to the religious zealots in Birmingham at that primary school.
Yes, and she has a history of standing up to Corbyn as well, which is one of the reasons why the North voted against Labour this time, because they didn't like it. So I reckon that once it gets on, particularly once we have some of the debates...
Personally, I'd think she'd actually be a better candidate than Long Bailey.
Yeah.
But the problem is, Momentum hate her.
They loathe her. I was watching a video the other day where it was talking about the tweets about how much they hate her. and it was basically them saying that she shouldn't even be a member of a party, let alone an MP.
I actually said, I was with two friends on Monday, was having a drink, and they're both members of Momentum. They're not just members of the Labour Party, they are Momentum activists. And I said, do you know what? If Phillips actually became Labour leader, and she didn't notoriously fuck up in the meantime, I said I could vote for her as you know, for in a presidential, in a prime ministerial election. And the look they gave me was as if they wanted to spit at me or spit in my food. And they said, if that awful woman becomes Labour leader, I will leave the party.
It's a bit sexist, isn't it?
Oh, how very unprogressive.
Yeah, exactly. What happened to the sisterhood? I reckon we should get your Momentum friends on the podcast.
To be fair, they're the same people who refer to Stella Creasy as an awful woman. So, who's like, I've got nothing against Stella Creasy, but she's very milquetoast. I don't know how you can refer to her as an awful woman.
She's pretty much bog standard Labour at this point.
She's like bog standard centrist Labour.
Yeah,
like, she's very like woolly, cuddly, kind of like Joe Cox. Part of Labour, and I don't mean that in a mean way. I don't mean to besmirch Joe Cox. I just mean that she is very middle of the road.
Yeah, it's not like Blair or something who would, as a person who looks quite fair on the outside of it, and Kai is Alistair Campbell, as it were.
But these are constituents of Creasy, Walthamstow. But I mean, to be fair, I just don't think ideologically they're just not on the same page as her. So hence, I think they'd like to see her deselected.
I do find it as sort of a sort of final tangent, as it were. It is quite interesting, the sort of the animosity between the different factions of the left is so much more intense than the animosity between
the right.
And right.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not a massive, like, I don't like certain elements of the right, but we're still under the sort of conservative umbrella, as it were.
You pull together.
Yeah, we're a lot better at that.
To be honest, I think the Liberal centre can pull together, whether that be between the Lib Dems and Liberal centrist Labour. I think the problem is the left. I think the left need a different party, but the reality is the left knows they can never gain power if they have a different party.
But when they actually have the same party, they act like we don't want anyone power in the first place. Like,
and I suppose their argument would be, well, no, this is Labour, this is originally a left-wing party, this is a unionist left-wing party. Why should we leave? It should be the Liberals that leave. And I suppose that has come to pass 30 years ago with the SDP.
True, but the only time that the proper left had power was 1979.
Yes.
So I think the argument is, well, it might be called Labour, but in all intents and purposes, the only time this party has had power has been with a centre-left government.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was still for, I mean, if you think about it in regards to modern history, it was a blip, it was 13 years.
Yeah, it was. It was extremely...
I mean, we're coming up on that now with a Conservative government.
We are indeed. I mean, by the end of this, it will be basically the same. It
will be
the end of the term. It will be the same amount of Blair.
It will be
over
Blair. It'll be over. And when we say Blair, we don't just mean Blair. We mean Brown as well.
And that was only.
It will be a year, at least a year over what Blair and Brown did.
That's true. And as I think we said, it's going to be very difficult for the Labour to move over. So we could be knocking on 20 years.
We could be knocking on a bigger. And I actually do predict this, a longer Conservative stint than Thatcher and Major's stint, which was, 18 years?
Yeah, that does worry me, because if we think that, if people who don't like Boris might not do it, but God, can you imagine the person after Boris?
Oh,
imagine the next Tory leader after him.
I don't know who could pop up in that time.
No, because all the people that have sort of popped up over the time, I think their time has passed. Like, I don't think Michael Gove would have been.
I could see none of the ERG...
No.
Coming up and becoming the next leaders.
No.
As you said, Gove's a spent force.
Yeah.
Because to be fair, without Johnson, there's no Gove.
No.
Gove is always in tandem with Johnson for some reason. They're kind of connected at the hip, despite the fact they don't particularly like each other.
Not since the end of the referendum when Gove stabbed him in the back.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that, by all accounts, Gove is very good on the media. And he's also a very competent minister. Like, he drove, when he was Environment Secretary, he sort of moved the Tory party in that direction.
The reason he's got a kind of weird rap is because it just happened to be his first major ministerial role was education, and he was there for a while.
Yeah.
It's just, at the end of the day, education is it tends to be at its root a very left-wing, ideologically left-wing sort of establishment.
Yes.
And whatever he does is just not going to be popular.
Yes, there was and I have a little bit of experience in education, not as a teacher, but as in the finance element. And there's there is an element of we don't like you don't like the academy system. We don't think it's good. And when you try and drill down into that,
it's simply ideology.
It's completely ideological. Like there was a case where it was a Catholic school, and I come from a Catholic family, and there was the local Labour Party were putting a lot of pressure on the local PTA to stop them becoming an academy. Yeah. And the main reason and it was sort of let out that this was, and why they eventually became an academy, was because the PTA found out that the reason the Labour Party didn't want that is because their ultimate ambition is to abolish free schools whatsoever, which is not something that you can really do once they've become a faith academy. Legally, it's a lot more difficult to do.
The reason we don't have grammar schools anymore is New Labour.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think there was a bit of a hobby horse for Theresa May, but on principle, I think.
Yeah, in all honesty, I know they worked. I know that even within New Labour, there was an ideological bent that meant they didn't see them as fair. They left certain students behind. But that was an argument for, instead of getting rid of the grammar school system, you implement a vocational system for those kids that were left behind.
Yeah.
Instead of letting them rot in the public schools.
Don't tear people down, build other people up.
State schools, sorry, not public schools. Yeah, absolutely. Instead of letting those kids rot as they did, let them build a vocational system. And I know there are certain people who would have said to that, oh no, but if you create a parallel vocational system to the grammar system, then you're not allowing academic education to half the population or whatever it is.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of people, and that's such an academically minded thing to think.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not something. It's completely taking out the fact that a big chunk of the population realise at quite a young age that they're not going to be historians. They're not going to be scientists. They want to do something with their hands, and the more opportunity that we give them, as opposed to putting a stigma on it, as what happened in the Blair is on their education, is actually going to be better.
It was well intended, which is social mobility. Yes. But the reality is that just doesn't work in the North.
No, it doesn't, and they don't want that. They prefer it, and the people that I know, particularly in our 20s, who earn the most money, are people that left school at 16 or 18 and went into a trade.
Absolutely, they went, and they're now plumbers and now plasterers.
And they're trades that are not going to go away for a long time. Whereas in my profession, in finance and accountancy, that is getting automatised.
Software's coming in.
Exactly. Yeah. So whilst there always will be a need for that, there's a lot less need than people would have thought 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Whereas when it comes to plumbing, that people are always going to need to fix the plumbing, even if it's to make sure the robots are doing the plumbing correctly.
Right, so we're pretty much an hour and a half. I think it's time to sign off. Mm-hmm. We're going to go and jump on a bus to Loughton and drink. Mm-hmm. So, any closing thoughts?
No. I hope you see you again, and the World War III mongers are wrong.
Yeah, next week's going to be interesting because now we're back on sort of probably going to do weekly shows and getting them out weekly now that our system's back on track.
Yes,
we're now able to streamline work.
We're paying attention to the Iraq thing, the Labour leadership, and the US primaries, which is hotting up on us very soon.
So next week should be interesting. So anyway, speak to you then.
Bye.